Coming to you on day 3 of the raid, and today I want to talk about why I refitted my flagship and why X1 on the normal Swallowtails is pretty much useless. Hey everyone, Derpy here, welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. Just jumping into the first topic, the flagship, this was the build that I started with at the start of the raid. It seemed really important to me, and after seeing the flag come out, it seemed like it was designed as an offensive hull. The only differences about the flagship are that it has 4 million base armor, which seems pretty inconsequential, and it does have a little bit of a UAV damage type bonus, 50% higher than the normal Swallowtail. With that said, it seems like all the indicators were showing us that we should build this one as a damaged ship. I was going to have 2 countermeasure ships, whatever, they were all going to match the same speed, and of course when U3 flag came out, I thought that combat speed would be really useful, which is why I went for Hyper 30 across all 5 ships in my fleet, so I can outrun all these different crews. Now Kixeye did 2 major things that sort of screwed with this build idea, and this gets at a larger problem that was going to need its own separate dedicated video. But what I've got for you now is that the combat speed of this ship is 117, and it turns out that that really wasn't needed. It probably would be needed if you didn't have any ships at X1 and these heavy cruisers were really fast and they were going to do damage to you, but instead we do have X1 and we have a duplicate ore cap here, which is a little hard to see, so I'll pop over to one of my normal ships, which is up to X1. I have 1 ship to X1, which funnily enough is exactly what you need. Now, this duplicate aura that you're looking at under the special abilities has a misleading stat right here, which Kixeye is aware of and they're not intending to do this, but it has a duplicate ore cap of 5, and it reduces the enemy ship's combat speed and reload for penetrative and corrosive. Both great things. Now, you may notice that ships actually don't slow down by more than 18% regardless of how many ships you have at X1 in your fleet. That is because of a niche hidden stat in the game where for combat speed debuffs, and this was started for PvP but applies to all ships, combat speed debuffs only take the highest value. If I have an 18% and a 50% and 25% and a 5% and 17 2%, only that highest value actually takes effect. This effectively means that if you have 5 ships up to X1, you only get the benefit of 1 ship at X1 in terms of combat speed. Now, this means that the enemy ships are slower. I mean, they're 18% slower than I thought, so you don't need that Hyper 30 on your fleet. So hey, there you go. I just saved you a special, you don't need Hyper 30. Unfortunately, I'm probably the person who told you put that on in the first place, but that again, that gets at a larger issue. Now, because we don't need Hyper 30, we can do other things with that special if we want to. And this gets at the huge issue I have with this particular raid cycle. Even though it's an issue, I hope they don't change it because many of us have already adapted to overcome this, and this was the change I made to my flagship. So again, on screen, you're seeing my flagship right here, and I mentioned it had 4 million armor points. This is in comparison to the 3.5 million on the standard Swallowtails. Okay, great, flagship's a little more efficient in terms of repairing, it can take some more damage, maybe build this one as a tank. Not so fast, because every single enemy penetrative missile turret, missile ship, has King Killer. Now this mechanic is a mechanic that targets the highest health ship in the target. We've seen it a few times to spread damage around, we each have a Zealot with 500,000 armor points, and they all get hit pretty evenly, works great, you can spread out 20 minutes damage super evenly, instant repair. Not so fast. Because this has more base health to start out with, 4 million compared to 3.5 on everything else, for the first 1/8 or so of the ship's entire health, it's going to be the only thing targeted by missile things in the entire target. All the damage is focused on the flagship. I really don't like this, and it forces us to have all this damage on the flagship, and really, it's not a 25-minute for instant repair threshold, it's a 5-minute for instant repair threshold. I didn't like this. I almost actually built another 5th ship as a tank. I'm glad I didn't, but this screws with us. This means that to have a low damage in this target, you need to 1, drive well, 2, have a decently built fleet, decently built upgrades, and 3, make a super crazy high evade flagship. I first started out by taking the flagship and modifying a few things. I took drone battery off and I turned that into evade upgrade. I took another special off, pipeline UAV circuitry, which it's a good special, gives you chain count, projectile speed, penetrative reload, UAV damage. I took that off and gave UAV upgrade. They also took off this missile special and gave it evade upgrade for all 3 of these things, is what I meant to say. Turns out this brings up your evade to 78%, which is actually still not enough. I was still getting 13 minutes damage on the flagship, 0 seconds on everything else. Not quite enough. So then I went ahead and, again, refitted, took off Hyper 30, and put on Guidance Scrambler 3. Now, this was pretty annoying because it meant all my other 4 ships were going to be way faster, it wasn't going to work, so I had to just take Hyper 30 off of those. I could have left the slot blank and that would have worked out okay, but I elected to put either on Drone Battery or on Praetorius Defense System for damage or penetrative reload were those 2 options. I could have gone with a few other things like missile damage. I elected just to make them all the same specials. But this is the build I'm currently running in the raid, and it has a very high evade, and again my flag is U2, up to 84%. You can do a few more things like strict Buckeye UAV targeting if you would like to, but the problem is you get rid of your penetrative range, which means you really cannot auto very easily, and all your ships are not going to stack up, and you can't just click on the turret, you have to click on the water. I didn't go ahead and do that. Another few changes I would make if I had the build tokens for it I would turn these armors into all of the M armor of the highest tier, so you increase your penetrative survival marginally. Again, that's not the biggest deal, but it is possible. So I went for a evade upgrade on all these things here. I also thought about doing something like lowered penetrative mount if you wanted to, but that doesn't stack, I believe, with Hyper 30, so you were a little bit out of luck for that. Actually, it looks like you could, and this might be a good option if you want to go in an extreme build and mess around with combat speed as well, but I wouldn't recommend that. So this is where I've turned my flag into, and you really don't even need these UAVs on here. I already have them on there. This is what I'm planning to have my flag for the second raid. And I hope Kixeye doesn't change its mechanic before the second raid, even though it is extremely annoying. Now, this turns out that after spending a day refitting, I can do these targets now for instant map repair if I drive them pretty well. And this is sort of the end of that first topic about the flagship and why I'm refitting it and why I would refit it to, obviously including the CIC, but I'm not quite done yet because I want to talk about upgrades, everyone's favorite thing to hate, and actually I'm going to give you some good news on this one because X1, in my opinion, is only beneficial for the flagship. You'll remember all the damage goes to the flagship. There's some to the 5th ships or the other ships in the fleet if you are autoing and take corrosive damage, whatever. There's some damage there, but let's just go through the upgrades and figure out what is helpful to those ships. So this is a U3 ship that I've got right here. Let's pop it in upgrade and see what it gets, and you get all these things in light green. Evade bonus, not relevant because the regular ships are not getting hit. Penetrative survival, not relevant because those ships aren't being hit. Corrosive survival, not relevant because those ships aren't being hit. The entire aura, okay, that seems beneficial, combat speed and whatever else, but if you remember that this combat speed aura, if we actually pull up my ship that has it, doesn't apply. Even though it says duplicate aura cap 5, the combat speed effect actually only stacks once. So if you upgrade your ships to X1 and spend 6 days to do that, the benefit that you're getting is the 10% corrosive reload debuff and the 10% penetrative reload debuff. That 18% combat speed, as long as you have one ship to X1, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whatsoever if you have 5 ships, 100 ships at X1, you have the same benefit. So one ship is all you need up to X1, and that's going to be a flagship, because all these other benefits we talked about, the corrosive survival, the evade, that is very important. Penetrative survival is very important for the flagship. That's great, you want your flag at X1. The other ships, you can save 6 days times 4 ships and save 24 days of build time and keep those guys at U3. You don't need to waste it upgrading your Swallowtails to X1. If you can get it done with tokens, of course, go ahead and do that. I'm probably going to have some extra tokens next time the TLC runs around. I might get a second normal up to X1. I've got one already, which is enough, and I get the maximum combat speed debuff, so that's fantastic. Now, of course, this could all change if Kixeye changes something. I don't think they will, and I actually hope that they don't. But as of now, you do not need to upgrade your 4 regular Swallowtails to X1, just do the flagship. Now, if you're not going to have time to get the flagship done to X1 because it does take longer to do upgrades, just upgrade one ship to X1 and leave it. You don't need to upgrade more than one to X1 is the entire point I'm trying to make here. Now, I did mention that I did that special swap on my other few ships, so I still do have the Pretorius Defense System, a countermeasure special, on here, just because it matches up. I have the same reload cycle time throughout all the ships. I could have gone with Penetrative Upgrade if I wanted to instead. I elected again just to go with this one. So hey, those are the changes I made middle of the raid, which again, I don't like doing, and that is a larger problem for a different video, but I just wanted to cue you in briefly there on my new Evade flagship build. Again, is up still at U2, it will get higher up to X1, has 84% bonus Evade, and also, of course, running a Sea Serpent's crew with that when I can. And in terms of the X grade, just upgrade one ship, and if you can, have that ship be the flagship, that will be the one that's helpful. All the others, keep it U3 for those bonuses in terms of the chain count, chaining damage, etc. And don't even do U2. I mean, if I could skip U2, I would. I don't want that corrosive survival. So get a few ships up to U1, flag to X1, and then upgrade things to U3. I'd rather have 2 at U3, 2 at U1, than 4 at U2 is what I'm trying to say here. Of course, if you do auto, which again I do, it does matter a little bit, just not a lot for driving. Alright, this has been a pretty long video, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. I want to again thank everyone whose name appears on screen now, and as always, until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.